I see some of my friends from Tirupati are here also.
Hare Krishna. Okay, Jay. So we're getting started now. Thank you, dear devotees, for joining this evening as we have His Grace Anuttama Prabhu. As you all know, Anuttama Prabhu is one of the leaders of our movement. He's a member of the GBC, and of course, we've introduced him in the past, so I won't spend too much time on that. But he's also the head of the Department of Communications, the Ministry of Global Communications, and it is my honor to be serving under him as co-director in North America. And he is a leader, but he's also my personal mentor and my guide in many aspects of Krishna consciousness and life in general. So I appreciate that he's able to give us some time. And so thank you again for joining all of us, and thank you, Anuttama Prabhu, for this session. And now we can hand it off to you. There you go.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Madan Gopal. And thank you. I want to thank the devotees of this Sangha because I know it's been 6 months now. Is that right, Madan Gopal Prabhu?
More than that, we started in March. So
Started
yeah,
March.
it's
March to April to May to June, July, August, September, October, November. Almost 9 months.
yeah,
That's
every day.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful to provide that opportunity. I do know that devotees from around the world are aware of this Tha that goes on every night. So it's a wonderful service to all the devotees. So I'm honored to be back again. And let's start. We'll chant. I'm gonna read from Gita, but maybe we'll chant Jai Radha Madhava first before we do that. Get my little. I have a little mini harmonium here on the desk, so I think because of the way it works, right? It's just best I just chant, and everybody
Yeah.
can still be muted and chant at home.
Right. Exactly.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Gopi Jana Ballava Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballava Girivardhari Yashodandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jairana Madhava Punyaviyari Jairana Madhava Punyaviyari. Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtachari Satarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtachari Satarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadina Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Namo Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadina Shivasani Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Vaishnav Sangha ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna. So again, it's a pleasure to be here again with the devotees from New Jersey, Towaco Yatra, and the beautiful new temple that's coming up. I've seen some pictures. I have many meetings with Manugopal, and I'm always getting this beautiful backdrop that he shows of the new temple coming up. So that's always very inspiring to see that. So actually, next year, 2021, I don't know how many of you are aware of this or thinking about it, but next year is a very, very important year. I may be asking some questions on and off during my little talk, so I don't know if we want to. How do we do that, Manugopal Prabhu? How do I get comments from people? You can maybe, let's just give it a try. You can unmute yourself in a hurry, see who gets it. What is next year's celebration, 2021? It's a very big year for ISKCON. Who knows what it is? Anybody, you can unmute and call it out. We are about 21 days away from it. Okay, nobody knows. Okay, so now after tonight, you need to know. Someone asked you, what's the big deal about 2021? It is the 125th anniversary of the birth, the appearance in this world of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Okay, that's a big anniversary for us. So I was going to talk about that a little bit, about next year and about why it's important. And then I was thinking, well, I can talk about that, but I better have some verse to back up what I say. So I'm going to start with a very famous or well-known verse, and I'll just read part of the purport, set the tone. First we hear from Prabhupada, then we'll talk about Prabhupada. So, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadikshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Lord Krishna says, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Purport. I'll just read part of the purport. The path of spiritual realization is undoubtedly difficult. Sometimes we think it's supposed to be easy and there must be something wrong with me. But Prabhupada's saying here, no, it's a difficult path. The path of spiritualization is undoubtedly difficult. The Lord therefore advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line of the disciplic succession from the Lord himself. No one can be a bona fide spiritual master without following this principle of disciplic succession. The Lord is the original spiritual master, and a person in the disciplic succession can convey the message of the Lord as it is to his disciple. No one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process, as is the fashion of the foolish pretenders. The Bhagavatam 6.3.19 says, Dharmam tu sakshad bhagavat planitam. The path of religion is directly enunciated by the Lord. Therefore, mental speculation or dry arguments cannot help lead one to the right path. Nor by independent study of books of knowledge can one progress in spiritual life. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master to receive the knowledge. Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. So, we are on the eve of the 125th anniversary of the transcendental appearance of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And it's natural that all the devotees and friends, members, people who appreciate ISKCON in any way, that we would all celebrate this big occasion. And so it should be a big thing. And there'll be a lot of, in our local communities, we should be looking how to particularly emphasize this year and take advantage of this celebration year. And also, in addition to some maybe special events we'll have, it's a very important opportunity and a reminder for all of us to go very deep in our understanding of Srila Prabhupada and of his teachings and of his life and of his mission and of our own personal relationship with Srila Prabhupada, and particularly look at his mood and the practical application by which he applied Krishna consciousness. As the years go by for each of us in our own personal lives and as an international society, we'll always be facing new situations, new opportunities, and new challenges. And one of the functions or one of the gifts of an acharya is they teach us by their own example how do we deal with different situations. None of us is going to face the situation of being gored by a cow in the streets of, I think it was Delhi, on a hot day distributing books and whatever the year was. Those days are kind of gone. It could still happen to one or two of us, but generally that's not a challenge. But we can learn from how Prabhupada dealt with that, addressed that, responded to that, and apply that to our own lives. So we look to the past, the lives of the acharyas, particularly our founder acharya, and learn from him how do we apply that in the situations that we may experience in 2020, 2021, and into the future. One of the projects that I'm helping to assist on is the GBC, following the order of Srila Prabhupada, is working on a constitution for ISKCON to really codify, just like we see those of us live in America, we can see, the Constitution has an important role to play. Because sometimes issues, problems come up 250 years later, and if you don't have something written down, it gets to be kind of messy how to figure out how do you work your way through that. So one of the important parts of this Constitution is to further clarify Prabhupada's position as our founder acharya, and as we're understanding and learning more in the last few years, how his role of the preeminent Siksha Guru, he's the prominent teacher for all of us. We may think, well, I go to the Towaco temple and these are the 5 or 6 people who usually give classes. Of course, now with online, you've got hundreds of people giving classes. Or somebody else may be at some other temple and they primarily hear from this other person. Or someone may have this Diksha Guru or that Diksha Guru or this Diksha Guru or so many different Siksha Gurus, different instructing gurus. But Prabhupada is the primary person for all of us as our founder acharya for us to achieve spiritual knowledge. So why is that, and how does he play that role in our life? And here, if we can, Madan Gopal, I'd like to maybe, if you can push the magic button and unmute almost everybody or everybody. I'd like to get a little feedback, just you can kind of yell out, hopefully won't turn into too much complexity. Let's list some of the ways that Prabhupada has a preeminent central role for us. What are some of the things he's done or things that we experience, or ways that he interacts with our lives practically on a daily basis with this unique position of our founder acharya? Anybody want to say some of those things?
Well, I can start with the books. Books is the foundation of all our knowledge and everything that we base our philosophy and lifestyle and pretty much everything. So that's one of his foundational contributions.
Very good. His books and, of course, his purports to those books. Great. Okay, what's another one? Everybody's muted. How do we...
We worship Srila Prabhupada. We worship Srila Prabhupada every day in our temples all over the world in his Murti form, practically every day. And this is a very important function which establishes his preeminence as as you said, our Siksha Guru.
Very good. And we know even now, like...
And founder acharya.
Yes, and we know even now, like I may go on the altar and do puja. So I bring the picture of my initiating guru while I'm there, and then I take that, he's a very important person in my spiritual life. I take his picture off. The next Pujari comes, I bring a different picture, but Prabhupada's picture is always there because we're all connected to Prabhupada. Great. That's a wonderful example of Prabhupada's Murti in the temple. Great. What are some other ways that Prabhupada is the founder acharya and plays a especially unique role for us?
I got one. Oops.
That's okay. Let's go ladies first and then whoever the man's voice was.
Hare Krishna. I'll say it quickly. The Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had said that one must chant 100,000 names of the Lord a day, which means 64 rounds. But Srila Prabhupada gave us 16. And if we chant 16 rounds a day and follow the 4 principles, he guarantees it, guarantees it that will go back to Godhead. So we're specifically to the 16 rounds and the 4 regs, and he's guaranteeing we'll go back to Godhead.
Very good. Yeah, and he's the one that clarified that for us, isn't he? The 16. Okay, great. And there was another voice in the background. Was that Apurva?
Yes, that's right. Prabhupada gave us prasadam, which is our love, our sustenance, and every day we offer to Krishna. And this is really one of the initial factors which brought us all to the Krishna conscious movement. So Prabhupada gave us that, and he gave us a process to do it. And he created on his own a 16-course feast single-handedly in the very beginning. Amazing.
And who has a better realization of that but Apurva and Kamalini, two of the best cooks in ISKCON, famous for their contributions. And I would add, just to expand on that a little bit, Apurva Prabhu, you know, you can go any temple and they give a little prasadam, but who else has a Sunday feast? You know, we all know how important that is for us to come together as congregation members, even temple residents. The Sunday feast, of course, now we can't so well because of COVID, but that'll be over sometime soon. And how that whole concept of coming together with the Sunday feast and relishing wonderful prasadam. What's another one? Another Prabhupada special things that Prabhupada's given us.
Srila Prabhupada, he gave us the personal conception of God. He actually defeated, so to speak, defeated the impersonal conception, which if you look at the Encyclopedia Britannica, maybe over 25 years ago, when you looked at it, there was no mention of Vaishnavism. There is now.
Wonderful. So he, in addition to other things, really made Vaishnavism famous all around the world, and particularly expounded on this personal concept of God, which it's a fact even today. Scholars and people in general, they're still largely affected thinking that anything coming out of India, the Vedic tradition, is impersonal, but probably really help defeat that and make that concept of personalism important around the world. I'll just mention a couple others just for sake of time. I was thinking today, there's Rath Yatras all around the world. Now, we all know Rath Yatras started in India, of course, and Rath Yatras in Calcutta, in Puri is the most famous. Perhaps the widest Puri. South Africa and South America and South Chicago and everywhere else. So, you know, that really was a unique contribution to Srila Prabhupada. ISKCON is the gift of Srila Prabhupada. The whole concept of an international organization with, shared leadership and individual temples and the structure of ISKCON he gave. The whole morning program, if you go to the temple, if you go to Gaudiya Math temples, of course, they're worshiping Krishna, and they're also coming in the line of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But Prabhupada is the one that gave us the unique format and the structure of how we worship in our temples. So many things that Prabhupada, and they're all Prabhupada's gifts. They're all Prabhupada's gifts. So while we all benefit from the leadership of our different Siksha Gurus and Diksha Gurus, it's really important that we remember Prabhupada's essential role. And that if we don't think about it so much, this year coming up is a great opportunity to kind of build that relationship even deeper. So next round of questions. What are some of the ways, have a little shared discussion here. What are some of the ways that we can build that relationship with Srila Prabhupada? How can we cultivate? What are some of the ideas and how we can do that? Anybody can jump in again.
Prabhupada laid down the 7 principles of Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, another one of his special contribution, yes. So how can we build that relationship with him?
By following those principles.
Very good. Specifically, you're talking about the purposes, yeah? The 7 purposes?
Right.
Okay, very good. Very good, very important. By understanding, Prabhupada gave us his mission. If we want to have a relationship with him, we need to cultivate in our own hearts and participate in that mission. Thank you, Prabhu. Very good point. What's another one? To build our relationship with Prabhupada.
Following his instructions.
Following his instructions, very good. Very good. Very good.
Spreading Krishna consciousness. There was one thing I was thinking in relationship with what you were saying to begin with was, it's one of the amazingly unique contributions that Prabhupada came at a time when We have so many recordings of Srila Prabhupada. We have so many video recordings of Srila Prabhupada. His whole life was like an open book. There was no private life to Srila Prabhupada. He demonstrated for one and all what the gold standard of pure devotional service, so that if anybody really wants to follow without falsely imitating, they can follow in Srila Prabhupada's footsteps. That is a most wonderful contribution.
Very important. Yeah, and like you say, there's a whole wealth of this information now. There's so many biographies of Srila Prabhupada, all of Prabhupada's lectures. You know, Vanapedi, I had a couple questions just preparing for this talk. You go and you type like a half a sentence, even broken English. Bingo, Vanapedi, it pops up right there. That Panchatattva, that wasn't there a few years ago. It wasn't there at all. So there's a lot of opportunities. So we can listen to his lectures, isn't it? We've got all his lectures. We certainly should be reading his books. And when we think about his books, I was just reading in the Lilamrita about Prabhupada in Amritsar and how devotees were going sometimes up to 8 programs a day, they said. They came back this one day after the 8th program, and devotees were just completely exhausted. And they went, Prabhupada still had his light on. He was still working. And as we know, Prabhupada would labor very hard. He'd stay up all night long just to translate his books. So we should really relish those books as an opportunity to associate with Prabhupada. So there's his books, his lectures, serving his mission, very, very important, celebrating his birthday, his appearance day, and his departure day. And also, where Thea's praying to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, help me. I'm having this difficulty. Prabhupada, help me, inspire me how I can understand how to serve you better. Those are also ways, important things that we should do to build our relationship with Srila Prabhupada. And there was one other one I jotted down I want to mention. Lectures. Oh, yeah. Sometimes I'm surprised because I happen to be initiated by Prabhupada directly. So when I chant pranam prayers, I chant Prabhupada's pranam prayers. And sometimes I'll go like the deity greeting, and I go down and I chant my 2 mantras for Prabhupada, and other people are like already standing up already. And I'm trying to understand, well, how did that happen? Because they're initiated. They've got at least, two verses, right, of pranams for their guru, 1 or 2 couplets might be the right way. But then everybody is supposed to chant at least one, I was trying to remember if you do, I didn't have a chance to look it up. Either before or after your initiating guru, you're also supposed to chant Prabhupada's pranam prayers. So I was saying how these Prabhus like chanting so fast. They're really quick. They got it down. But, that again, that's something we should remember. And that helps us understand, okay, I may offer my respectful obeisance to my Diksha Guru. I'm also supposed to, when I get up first thing in the morning, when I go into the temple, before I go to sleep at night, I'm supposed to offer my pranam prayers. And by ISKCON's culture, it's supposed to be for my Diksha Guru, if we have one, and Srila Prabhupada. If we haven't accepted a Diksha Guru, it should be to Srila Prabhupada. So that's another way that helps us to meditate and remember our relationship with Prabhupada. And I want to emphasize, too, this idea that, what does it mean? Very first comment was to serve Prabhupada's mission. It talked about the 7 purposes. In our line particularly, it's such an important thing. And 125th anniversary, and Prabhupada, physically left this world in 1977, so that's so many years since that time. We really have to work hard to keep Prabhupada's mood, Prabhupada's mission, Prabhupada's teaching, Prabhupada's existence very powerful in our movement. It's going to take an effort. One example of this that Prabhupada translated, as did Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati sometimes also, bhakti, not just as devotion, but devotional service. Tamal Krishna Maharaj highlights in his book, A Living Theology, this is one of the great contributions of Srila Prabhupada, this emphasis on bhakti meaning devotional service. So the idea of serving, the idea that it's an action, that we serve with our body, our minds, our words. Those of us the grahastas who serve with our money. We're meant to set aside the things our body likes to use it for Krishna, at least part of it. Set aside the time we have, set aside some of our words, set aside some of our thoughts, put aside some of our money in order to serve Krishna. So that's, very, very important for us to do. And then I wanted to highlight a couple ways that I think are really important for us to do. That we take the time when we're studying, when we're listening to Prabhupada's books and his lectures and reading so many biographies about Prabhupada, that we really take the time, as Prabhupada said, study my books threadbare, to really look at it from all angles of view and to try to understand things very carefully. Why? Because Prabhupada said in this first section of the purport, he said spiritual life is very difficult. Other places he says Krishna consciousness is very easy, but the application is very difficult. So the process is easy, but the application is difficult. Well, in other words, you could say the philosophy is very straightforward. Krishna is God. I'm a servant of God. That's kind of like all there is to it. But at the same time, the application, he said, takes a little bit of intelligence. It takes a little bit of wisdom. And this is where sometimes we get a little messed up. And for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which Prabhupada founded, to continue, and in one sense, transcendentally, it's destined to, spread Lord Chaitanya's mission for the next 10,000 years. In a practical way, a lot of religious traditions don't make it out of the first 50 or 100 years. So it's essential for all of us as Prabhupada Nugas, as followers of Prabhupada, coming in the line of Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, etc., that we really have to prioritize understanding what's their mood, what's their mission, what's their priorities. Because if we're their servants, if we're valuing the gifts they've gave and we want to help share these gifts, we have to go really deep. We can't let it be superficial. We know there's a lot of superficial religiosity in the world today. I was just attending a webinar put on by the United States Commission for International Religious Freedom, talking about blasphemy laws around the world. And they have anti-blasphemy laws in 84 countries. And I think the number, about half of those, I think 41 of those countries, they actually enforce those laws. So if you walk down the street in some countries, you say something against Jesus, or another country, you say something they think is offensive to the Prophet Muhammad, or maybe you say something offensive to Ram, and then they throw you in jail. Where they're saying worse than that, the mob comes and gets you. Like if some rumor goes out, Panchatattva says something against Moses, so okay, don't go to Israel, you're in trouble. So they were talking about how what happens is these types of laws initially were written with the idea to help society be more peaceful. Don't offend other people. It's a nice sentiment. Don't offend my religion, but I won't offend your religion. But the thing's completely gone topsy-turvy, where people use that as justification to attack people who they say have offended my religion. So instead of making things more peaceful, they made things worse. Because people didn't really understand what's the purpose, what's the meaning, what's the intention behind it. It's not to increase violence, it's to decrease violence. So if in the name of supporting those laws, either government or non-government actors become more violent, they're contradicting the whole idea. They're the whole reason the law was put into place was to stop them, and then they use the law to do what the law wants them to stop. It's Kali Yuga. So in a similar way, we have to be very, very careful to go deep in our study of Prabhupada and understanding of Prabhupada, because otherwise we can't take Prabhupada's writing, we can take being a devotee in a very superficial way. And we know the world is full of superficial religiosity and people fighting and in conflict with one another, all because of some what they feel is piety, what they feel is devotion, but oftentimes it's very superficial, and it's defined not in terms of my devotion to God, but it's defined, I'm not like you. It's like by putting you down, I lift myself up. This is one of the forms of kind of materialistic, you could almost say asuric religious practice in this day and age. So we have to make sure we're not victims of that. We have to be very careful to study Prabhupada's life, understand his mood, and understand things in a very, very careful way. To understand the principles behind what Prabhupada said and what Prabhupada does. And I was thinking just like a couple examples of this if I can, and then we'll try to leave 15, 20 minutes for questions. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the introduction, at the very end of the introduction, Prabhupada says something to the effect of, therefore, let there be one mantra, let there be one book, let there be one prayer. Now, if you just read that, you might come up with a kind of a sectarian view of things. Oh, these people think there's only one prayer, other prayers don't matter, or there's only one book, other books don't matter, etc. But we know if you turn elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, I might have quoted this in this the Towaco course previously, but 4.7, Prabhupada says, it is not a fact that the Lord only appears on Indian soil. He can manifest, which the Bhagavad Gita did, right? I mean, the Bhagavad Gita is on Indian soil. Prabhupada said it doesn't have to appear on Indian soil. He can manifest himself anywhere and everywhere, and whenever he whenever he desires to appear. In each and every incarnation, he speaks as much about religion as can be understood by the particular people under their particular circumstances. But the mission is the same, to lead people to God consciousness and obedience to the principles of religion. Sometimes he descends personally, sometimes he sends his bona fide representative in the form of his son or servant or himself in some disguised form. So if we read a little bit of Prabhupada, you might become a little militant. If you read another part of Srila Prabhupada, you might develop a different perspective. So we have to study very, very carefully. I mentioned I'm rereading the Lilamrita. I'm reading now volume 4. I just read about Prabhupada's visit to Amritsar, which is the golden temple of the Sikhs. And there was a couple things there. Prabhupada, there was some guest book. And they asked Prabhupada wrote a little comment in there. Anybody remember what, it's kind of an obscure part of Prabhupada's history. Anybody remember what Prabhupada wrote? Just a couple words.
Didn't Srila Prabhupada describe himself as a Krishnaite?
That's part of it, yes. When they said, what's your religion? He said, Krishnaite. Yes. Do you remember also there's another little comment he made? You got a great memory, Panchatattva. There's another little comment he made. He put down, like, about what was your experience here? He wrote, very spiritual. From visiting the Sikh temple, very spiritual place. So now if you're thinking, okay, only one book, only one mantra, only one like that, then how could that be spiritual? So we have to see in the broad perspectives of things. And Prabhupada also told the devotees, he went and saw how they were cooking so much prasad to be distributed to the pilgrims. And Prabhupada noted that, and he said, yes, this is how prasadam should be distributed. He wanted the devotees to learn from that. So if we look at Prabhupada a little more carefully, do we start to think and understand, well, what is Prabhupada's mood here? Fixed devotion to Krishna, when he speaks about, one book, one mantra, he's expressing his own devotion to Lord Krishna. And at the same time, he's broad-minded. He's appreciating other traditions. He's respectful of other traditions. And he's practical. We should be practical, because Prabhupada is saying, oh, look how they distribute prasadam. Let's learn how to do the same thing. And he's appreciative. Oh, what a wonderful, beautiful spiritual atmosphere. It may be different from the way we worship, but they have a very different philosophy than we have, but he's appreciating the spirituality of it all. Another example comes to mind in terms of really going deep, especially in this 125th year, and going forward about our relationship with Prabhupada. Who is Prabhupada? What did Prabhupada teach? How did Prabhupada apply the teachings? This is a really critical thing. The teachings are there. We have to go back and see how did he apply it. We know many, many places in the Shastra, Prabhupada condemns the association of materialistic people. Lord Chaitanya condemns the association of materialistic people. It's in the Shastra. You're not supposed to cross the ocean. Don't touch dirty things. Stay away from them. And we know in some traditions we hear, if a brahmana, the shadow of a sudra crosses the path of a brahmin. I was taking a course recently through the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies. They were saying that in some places in the recent past in South India, maybe North too, if a Sudra just walked down the street, he had to yell, there's a Sudra coming. And they would all slam their doors. All the Brahmins would slam their doors so they wouldn't be contaminated by him. Okay? Now, there's roots in, quote, Vedic culture. Okay? So we might read some things like that in certain parts of the Vedas or certain histories, certain stories about how one can become contaminated and how one has to be very, very careful. But again, we also read you're not supposed to cross the ocean. So Prabhupada crossed the ocean. Why? Important point. Because bhakti is the most important thing. To teach bhakti, to spread bhakti, to share bhakti with this understanding is throughout our Vaishnava literatures, the soul has an eternal relationship with Krishna. And it doesn't matter what our body is, black, white, young, old, Indian, American, German, Russian, whatever, rich, poor, highly educated, not so educated, man, woman, young, old, doesn't matter. The soul, despite the outer covering, has an eternal relationship with Krishna. And it's not just a philosophy, it has to be applied. If we study that philosophy, I'm not the body, and then again on the bus, and I don't treat a person kindly because they're black, or because they're brown, or because they're white, Or if I study the philosophy, you're not the body, and I go to the temple, and I don't make friends with a person because they're white, or because they're Gujarati, or because they're from the South, or because they're black, or because they're young. I'm on the bodily platform of life. I missed the first understanding. We should go to the temple. We should look out, every one of us, and again, we're going to be doing our more, physical meetings not too long. We should walk into the temple as Krishna's servant. This is his home, his palace. We should walk in there thinking, oh, who's come to see Krishna this week? Who can I help connect with Krishna? Oh, there's a young Indian man. Okay, let me connect with this person. Oh, there's an older, Italian guy. Great, let me connect with him. Oh, here's a young Latino man. Let me speak to him, and let me also go out of my way to find somebody else who speaks Spanish who can really connect with him. Not that I think I can't connect with him. I'm spirit soul. I can connect with him or her. Otherwise, if we start thinking, no, I can only talk to Gujaratis, or if I start thinking, oh, I can only talk to old white guys. I'm an old white guy now. I can only talk to old white guys. That's completely misunderstanding the philosophy. Completely misunderstand. Why? Because bhakti is the most important thing. So we see within this idea of the Shastra condemns associated materialistic people. It's all definitely bad stuff. It's not good for our Krishna consciousness from one perspective. At the same time, Prabhupada crossed the ocean. Who was on the other side of the ocean? A continent full of materialistic people. He left Vrindavan to go associate with those people. So how is that not completely contrary to the instructions of the scripture? And we should criticize Prabhupada. Prabhupada was terrible. He broke the policies. If you don't have the perspective of Krishna consciousness, the perspective of bhakti. I might have mentioned this story last time I spoke with you all, but I read it. It just really struck me again how Prabhupada, when he went to Butler and he was staying at the home of the Agarwals, and it's worth repeating. If you heard me say last time, he went to the home of, staying at the YMCA. He went to Sally Agarwal's home one evening. She had cooked late. They were meat-eating people. She said, Swamiji, I'm so sorry I haven't finished cleaning up. The smell must be very disturbing. Prabhupada said, I don't think anything of it. He was so gracious. Now we know the scriptures are full of condemnations of people eating meat. But time, place, and circumstance, she was Prabhupada's host. She and her husband were Prabhupada's host, so he treated her with great respect. Flash forward a few months later, Prabhupada's in New York. They have the 26th 2nd Avenue. Mr. Chutti, he was the building owner, and it's described in Lilamrita. You can go back and look it up. That sometimes Mr. Chutti, he liked Prabhupada, didn't like the disciples so much. Young hippies, they probably didn't know how to treat him with respect. Prabhupada would sometimes help Mr. Chutti take out the trash of the neighbors. Imagine that. He's a fully Krishna conscious person. He's an elderly gentleman. He's a Brahmana. He's just come from India, and he's going to take out the trash of materialistic people, meat-eating people. Why? Because bhakti trumps everything. The relationship with Mr. Chutti, who's facilitating us in our temple, came much more important than any kind of ritualistic things that might be there. So what did we learn about Prabhupada's mood? His humility. How many of us, put yourself in that same place, how many of us are ready to help Mr. Chutti take out the trash of the neighbors? Are we ready to do that? Then we haven't really understood Prabhupada's mood. We're not really following him. We may think we're Prabhupada Nugas, but we're not following if we don't follow his path, if we don't follow his example. So humility, again, practicality. If I take out the trash and keep Mr. Chutti happy so that he keeps our temple open, I'll take out the trash. Service, a service mood. Prabhupada wasn't thinking, I can't take out the trash. Prabhupada, we know the other stories, Prabhupada stand in line, wait for the shower with these young hippie guys waiting for his turn in the one shower that they had. So service mood and doing the needful. So we want to study Prabhupada, see his broad-mindedness, and then ourselves apply it. A third example comes up in my mind. We know that Prabhupada, we know the Shastra is very strict about so many things. And we know that Prabhupada is also very strict about various things. One example comes up, say, with marriage. There's certain things in the Shastra about divorce, very strong. I mean, if I haven't seen these, but I read some things about, a lot of contemporary movies now coming out of India about the mistreatment of widows. Sometimes a woman, she's 18 years old, her husband dies, she's a widow for life. That's what the Shastra says, may not be applicable at all in the modern age. I would seriously argue that it's not at all applicable. A lot of people say it's not. However, it's there in the scripture. And Prabhupada talked to us about, divorce isn't a good thing. Specifically, when they talk about like a sannyas, taking the vows of sannyas, in the Shastra, it says that if a man gives up sannyas, it's very graphic, heavy thing. Said it's like eating if you've taken sannyas, you renounce the world, and then you go back to marry again. It's described as like eating vomit. That's pretty graphic, isn't it? And yet, in the purports of the eighth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 8.230, Prabhupada talks about the main thing is to become Krishna conscious. Whatever ashram you're in, it doesn't matter. Become Krishna conscious. There was one sannyasi that gave up his vows and went away. Later, became involved in the movement again. He married. And devotees were criticizing him publicly. Prabhupada chastised him. He said, if you criticize him, how will he come back? So Prabhupada's first concern was about the devotion, the bhakti, engaging the devotees, giving them an opportunity to become a Krishna conscious. So when we read the scripture, when we read even Prabhupada's certain sections of Prabhupada's, we have to be broad-minded and read very carefully and see how did he apply it. Because with the principle of bhakti, Prabhupada was very, very merciful. So I remember when there was one of the first articles, maybe the first, in the New York Times, I think it was, they quoted Allen Ginsberg, who said that Swami Bhaktivedanta was very conservative. And when they read that to Prabhupada, Prabhupada was very upset. Not very upset. Prabhupada was upset. He questioned, why do they say conservative? I'm not conservative. And I think it was Satsrup Maharaj said something like, well, Prabhupada, I think they mean the four regular principles. And Prabhupada said, well, yes, on this, of course, we're conservative. Have to be. He said, but not in anything else. So in terms of the strict practice of Krishna consciousness, he's not going to, bend those things. Truthfulness, cleanliness, austerity, mercifulness, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no meeting, no gambling. He's going to teach those. He's going to establish those as the principles that we follow. He's going to clarify those are the ideals that we aspire to, that we work to, that we want to teach to the whole of human society. And at the same time, understand that Prabhupada was very merciful when people had difficulties. And he would just tell them, you just continue chanting, continue praying, and continue the process of Krishna consciousness. And he taught us we should be personally strict with ourselves, and we should be very liberal with others. And there are some tendencies, I'm seeing some of the things that I work on, there's some tendencies around the world where devotees, even people in very, very senior positions, are saying, nope, strict. You got to be strict. And yes, we have to be strict, and we have to be merciful. We have to be, we can't change the teachings, and we have to simultaneously understand some people will have difficulties from time to time, and that's okay. Some people are going to struggle with their materialistic habits, and that's okay. So many examples. Shama Sundar still smoking cigarettes, etc. So many examples. Probably just keep going. Make some progress. Make some progress. So just to wrap it up here, then hopefully a few minutes of questions. So important for us this 125th year to remember Prabhupada, read his books, listen to his lectures, hear the biographies about Srila Prabhupada, and really go deep. And when we go to the temple and when we associate with devotees, we should remember, okay, 16 rounds, who gave this as an instruction? Prabhupada. The high standard of deity worship, who set that standard? Prabhupada. Creating ISKCON, Prabhupada. The fact that there's a temple, Prabhupada. When I read the books, whose purports am I reading? Prabhupada's. When I chant pranamparas, I walk in the temple, I'm reading Prabhupada's pranamparas. So he is such an important person of all our lives, and will increase our taste and our enthusiasm for Krishna consciousness by going deeper in our relationship with him. And especially this point of how bhakti is the most important thing that he's taught us. And everything else we accept within the context. Prabhupada's conservative. We don't change the things that he gave us, but we have to also remember how he was flexible sometimes in how to apply it, because he wanted to give everyone the opportunity. Where is it in the Shastra that you can play a broken down piano in the middle of the temple? But they did in 26 Avenue. Somebody brought those things, and that was like, okay, the principle is, the tradition is kartals and mridungas. That's the tradition. So you could say, oh, you can't bring those in here. But the principle was use sound to glorify Krishna. So Prabhupada allowed that. The same way. The principle was separation of the principle is no illicit sex. And men and women should interact with each other in a respectful way, um, that is simultaneously understanding that too much intimate association, too much contact between men and women can lead to materialistic conceptions and mutual exploitation. So Prabhupada, that's the principle. So what did Prabhupada do? He created brahmacharini and brahmachari ashrams. And there's a wonderful quote. I'll end with this. This is from Chaitanya Charnamrita. Verses not here. I printed this in Vanipedia. I don't know. Here it is. 7:31:32. Describing Lord Chaitanya. Seeing that the Mayavadis and others were fleeing, Lord Chaitanya thought, I wanted everyone to become immersed in this inundation of love of Godhead, but some of them have escaped. Therefore I shall devise a trick to drown them. Prabhupada writes, it is the symptom of an acharya. This is the symptom. An acharya who comes for the service of the Lord cannot be expected to conform to a stereotype. He must find the ways and means by which Krishna consciousness may be spread. Sometimes jealous persons criticize the Krishna consciousness movement because it engages equally both boys and girls in distributing love of Godhead. Not knowing that these boys and girls in countries like Europe and America mix very freely, these fools and rascals criticize the boys and girls in Krishna consciousness for intermingling. But these rascals should consider that one cannot suddenly change a community's social customs. However, since both the boys and girls are being trained to become preachers, those girls are not ordinary girls, but are as good as their brothers who are preaching Krishna consciousness. Therefore, to engage both boys and girls in fully transcendental activities is a policy. Prabhupada says it's a policy intended to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. These jealous fools who criticize the intermingling of boys and girls will simply have to be satisfied with their own foolishness. These are quite strong words. It's a purport. There's no lecture, it's a purport. Because they cannot think of how to spread Krishna consciousness by adopting ways and means that are favorable for this purpose. Their stereotyped methods will never help spread Krishna consciousness. Therefore, what we are doing is perfect, Prabhupada says, by the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for it is he who proposed to invent a way to capture those who strayed from Krishna consciousness. So let's take advantage of this beautiful 125th anniversary year, go deep in our relationship with Prabhupada, and share that mood. Go really, really deep to understand and share that mood of Prabhupada, just simultaneously strict and so merciful and so compassionate and so flexible. So I'll stop there if there's any comments or questions. And thank you all. As soon as the mute's on, you're a really attentive audience. I have to compliment everybody.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. I just wanted to make a small comment, perhaps a suggestion for all the devotees who are in the forum, that now that we have woken up to this understanding, Srila Prabhupada's 125th anniversary is coming up. I mean, of course, the actual anniversary is in August, the day after Janmashtami, but we can kick off the celebration starting now, get ourselves warmed up, and it's December, so maybe January 1st onwards, maybe whichever groups that we're in, we all might be parts of small groups, or even just within our own families, or whatever circles we're in. It'd be good to just start reading properly Lamrit once again. Just start from January 1st and see how much you can cover. See if you can cover the whole of it by Janmashtami of next year, as much as possible. This way we can be in Prabhupada consciousness and be fully absorbed in it. Prabhupada Lamrit is there. So many other wonderful books by other disciples are there. So the Chasing Rhinos with the Swami is incredible set, and so many nice books are there. So I think that is something I want to share. I'll try to incorporate that into our little circle of reading as well. So
great, thank you.
I'd like to make one little comment, and it's also one of the really amazing contributions of Srila Prabhupada, that he left behind all of these wonderful devotees, one of whom is speaking, who have carried forth the banner of spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. And that's what makes it so dynamic, and what is Prabhupada's amazing contribution to not only to pick us all up, but to inspire, inspire lifelong dedication. It's very wonderful.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. I was actually thinking about that a little bit this morning. Like, okay, American presidents, they may come and go, right? I mean, who remembers who was the president in 1877? I mean, I'd have to really struggle. 1904, I'm not sure. But, just an example came to mind, say Lord Jesus Christ, 2,000 years later, impacting billions of people by his teachings. And the same way as time goes by, more and more people will be impacted by the Prabhupada's gift as they kind of unfold and expand themselves. And it's our responsibility as disciples and grand disciples and Prabhupada and Nugas to make sure that that mission continues. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Any questions at all, or other comments?
Yes, I have a comment. Previously, when Prabhupada started, ISKCON was very active in preaching. It was a preaching mission. And that's how the seven purposes of ISKCON was activated. Today, we are mainly a congregational, at least in America, a congregational temple. What steps can we do to revive that preaching mission, the Sankirtan movement?
Yeah, that's great. Well, one thing, I mean, I don't think we can conflate because we're a congregational movement, therefore we can't preach. But I think it is a fact that there's advantages. If you've got 50 people in a community and they're all brahmacharis and brahmacharinis, they're all getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning together, chanting their rounds, and by 9 o'clock they got to do something. That's a lot of manpower there. And whereas these days, a lot of us, get up, chant our rounds, and go to work, and that kind of taps into that energy. But actually, I think Vaisheshika Prabhu is like a really good advocate of this. That there's ways that you can be successful where 1 or 2 people do a lot, and there's other ways where a lot of people do a little. So if we can help others in their communities develop some of that preaching spirit, that desire to share Krishna consciousness with others, then 20 people in the congregation can do more than one person who lives as we used to live, in the temple, so-called full time. So it shouldn't be an obstacle at all. In fact, I'll give an example. Just last week, I saw the map for the planned 2 million Bhagavad Gitas to be distributed around the world. And in North America, the goal is 100,000. And 50,000 of them have been pledged by one place. Anybody know what place that is?
Silicon Valley.
Silicon Valley. Yeah, I don't even remember. Do they have a temple in Silicon Valley? I'm not
They have
even.
a very small center.
Very little tiny place. And I don't think they have maybe they have a brahmachari ashram and they got a couple guys, I don't know. Maybe they don't. They don't have more than a few, if that. So that's a congregational place, but they are, as far as book distribution, it's huge. And as far as, say, there's other forms of preaching too that are very important. Harinama is a very important way of doing of preaching. Distributing prasadam is a very important way of preaching. When people come to the temple, I think about this a lot. Let's say 100 of us go out and sell the books, and we work really, really hard, and we're so exhausted, we go up into our ashram. If we're living in a temple or at home, we just go home and go sleep. And then the people we sold the books to come to the temple. Nobody's there to talk to them. That's not so good, because the fruit of getting the book is reading the book. The fruit of reading the book is to want to associate with devotees. And the fruit of wanting to associate with devotees should be a growing community of spiritual aspirants. And like I mentioned early on, somebody comes to the temple, like sometimes we go out, we're really, really excited to go out and meet people in public to give them a book or to chant or something like that. But we should have at least that much excitement to take care of people when they come to the temple. I mean, if we maybe sell 100 books, what, maybe 10% of those people come to the temple? or within the first month, 10% is pretty good, I would think. Maybe 20. So that 20%, that's the cream of the crop. But then often they come to the temple and, what's the greeting? It varies from all kinds of things. That's why, are the bathrooms clean? That's preaching. We go to the temple, we shouldn't also think, well, I'm going to the temple, I'm a preacher, I'm going to find somebody to talk to about Krishna. But meanwhile, the bathroom's a mess. Well, if we're a preacher, we should clean the bathroom. Or the temple needs to be painted. Okay, well then let me, if temple needs to be painted, if I'm a preacher, let me go work a couple of weekends overtime and take the extra $1,000 I earn to give it to the temple to paint the temple. That's what a preacher would do. We can't separate. Now I'm preaching when I talk about Krishna, and everything else I do isn't preaching. The whole experience of the temple is preaching. The nice people I meet is preaching. The prasadam. I've sometimes been to ISKCON temples, not so often. The prasadam's not very tasty. I eat it because it's offered to Krishna, it's transcendental. But I'm not really inspired to come back there again. But we may think, hey, what's your problem? It's prasadam. Why can't you eat it? But we shouldn't think like that. We should think, well, wait a minute. How are we going to cook the prasadam so it's tasty, not too spicy? Not everybody can eat spicy food. And, make it flavorful and nice variety, served in a beautiful way by smiling people, because that's preaching. Again, not that we just think, okay, everybody has to go in Harinam, but the cooking and prasadam doesn't matter. That's preaching big scale. So all of these things, it's all part of Prabhupada's plan. There's one letter, I think it's a letter, might have been a conversation, at least one letter, I think, where Prabhupada wrote to somebody, said, accounting is our most important service. You think, well, accounting, why is accounting so important? Because we don't keep track of the money. How are we going to preach? How are we going to maintain the deities? How are we going to develop our temples? So whatever service we do, there's a couple stories. I just reread one recently. Prabhupada was watching a devotee clean the floor. He got off the Vyasasana, got down on the floor and showed him how to wash the floor. Because in Prabhupada's mind, it's not like I'm the guru. I sit on Vyasasana, I preach. You do all the work. He said, actually, it's the spiritual master's responsibility to clean the temple. You're just helping me. So I think, in answer to your question, when we recreate that mood, when we awaken, when we build further, I don't want to say it's not there, when we build further the mood of Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada's mercy, Prabhupada's compassion, when we find ourselves, I don't know if I want to walk across the room and talk to that person, they don't look very friendly, I don't know if I can relate to them, they look kind of sloppy, whatever, they look kind of poor, or they look too rich, or they look too beautiful, or they look too ugly, or they're the wrong race, or they don't look like they're born in a Hindu family, or they look like maybe they're this or they're that, or we should ask ourselves, wait a minute, what if Prabhupada thought like that before he crossed the ocean? I don't even want to cross the room. Prabhupada crossed the ocean for me, and I can't cross the room? My dear mind, shut up. I'm going to go try to be a friend of this person and inspire them in Christian consciousness. And that also takes a little bit of subtlety. I'm reading some of these biographies. It's amazing how many times Prabhupada embraced his disciples. You kind of think he's the guru. You don't do that. Prabhupada would embrace his disciples out of his compassion. Prabhupada would tell jokes out of his compassion. People, he would ask them all the time, how are you? How's your health? Out of compassion. So we should also remember, preaching to people doesn't just necessarily mean telling them what they're doing wrong. First and foremost, we should tell them what they're doing right. Oh, it's fantastic you came here. Somebody says, yeah, I'm a vegetarian on Monday. Wow, fantastic. One day a week, that's great. How are you doing it? Fan the spark. Fan the spark. And if we do that, then the next week they're going to say, I'm doing it 2 days a week. Wow, fantastic. That's great. Etc.
Actually, Prabhu, I understand your point, but you're saying that congregationally it shouldn't be a handicap for preaching. So we have like the Jehovah's Witness, they're preachers, they're congregation.
Yeah, good example.
But we need to activate that, because this would be a change in the status quo of sitting back and keeping temple. Training would be necessary so that we can revitalize the congregation to effective preaching.
Yeah, and these days, there's more training. We've got more training available now than we've ever had. The Vaisheshika, the seminars all across the world about Harinam. You want to learn how to preach to like priests and government officials and neighbors. There's a communications course online. There never was a communications online before. Talk about how to go out and make friends with people that can really open doors for us. There's guidelines on how to improve Harinam, etc. There's a lot. You're right. There's a lot of opportunities, and we have to take advantage. So thank you for emphasizing those points. Maybe time for one more, or Manu Gopal, are we done?
We are at 9 o'clock, so we typically end at this time, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
But it was a very enlivening and dynamic class, something to think about and something to energize and, like Arvind Daksh Prabhu said, activate. Let's activate these essential principles of becoming, we've always been a missionary movement, but that missionary spirit needs to always be watered with, and add fertilizer and energy and come up with creative ways of doing it. Like there's lots of courses available, like Prabhuji said. There's the ISKCON communications course, really nice course. There's of course, everybody knows the Guru Disciple course, the ISKCON Disciples course, which everybody has to take if you want to be initiated. So many different courses that'll help us understand the importance of who Srila Prabhupada is and what he wants us to do and how important it is for us to activate our inner preacher and preach in different ways. So thank you so much, Anuttama Prabhu, once again.
It'd be really exciting if Towaco gave Silicon Valley a run for their money. Yeah. So they pledged 50,000 Bhagavad Gitas. If you pledge 52, you'll embarrass them and inspire them to do even better next year.
Yes, actually, this sort of transcendental competition it actually works. A few years ago we had that. We just divided our congregation into 2 groups, just randomly. Say, okay, now let's see which team is going to distribute books, and we actually broke all the records in that area. And so that sort of competition really works. It was nice. So let's look for unique, creative ways of doing that.
Prabhupada encouraged it too, though, didn't he? Prabhupada encouraged that competition too. I remember hearing one exchange that it was being reported that one particular area or zone had done so many books and basically had outstripped Tamal Krishna Maharaj's parties. And Prabhupada quipped, "Don't tell Tamal, he'll have a heart attack."
Yeah, wonderful. So yeah, let's look into these ways of waking up that spirit and keep it active. So with that, I'm just going to share my screen and make a regular quick announcement. Shouldn't take more than a few seconds. So we have this program on this channel Monday through Friday. So of course tomorrow is Friday, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday we have His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj taking us through the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in the interactive dynamic fashion. And on upcoming Tuesday, we have His Grace Vishnu Gada Prabhu, and on Thursday we have Brahmatirtha Prabhu. So please be sure to join. We have some real wonderful speakers coming up throughout the year. And if you just think back, and if you've attended most of these classes, we have had so many different fantastic speakers globally. So please keep coming, supporting us, encouraging us. It really makes us feel very happy when we see more devotees join. So thank you once again. And at this point, if you'd like to say a quick report, thank you, Anuttama Prabhu. Please, you can unmute yourself, and we'll leave it open for about a minute or so. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuttama Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuttama Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Anuttama Prabhu.
Thank you, Anuttama
Prabhu. Always.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu Dandvat, Hari Bol.
I see Nilamani, I see Yadunath Prabhu. So many great Vaishnavas.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for your wonderful class always. Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Krishna, Prabhu.
Hari Bol, Dandvat, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, 52,000. Arvinda Prabhu. 52,000.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, I'll sign off. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Ki jai.
Jai.
Ki jai.